for all of these people who work in this office and serve our county and our state, because we would not be here without them. So thank you. I want to thank Lieutenant Tim Willis of the Oakland County Sheriff's Office and Special Agent Brett Brandon of the ATF. They were instrumental in this prosecution and conviction. They were devoted, they were dedicated, and I couldn't ask for two more law enforcement partners that were as dedicated to victims as these two men. Most of all, I'd like to thank the mothers and fathers standing to the right and left of me. It has taken unwavering courage. I will forever remain in awe of their strength and perseverance that they have shown in the last 2.5 years. This verdict does not bring back their children, but it does mark a moment of accountability and will hopefully be another step to address and end and prevent gun violence. These were egregious facts in this case. These parents could have prevented this tragedy that was foreseeable with just the smallest of efforts. They could have prevented this shooting and saved these kids' lives and protected the hundreds of kids in the school that day and all of the members of the Oxford community that it devastated. With just basic, reasonable, ordinary care. This prosecution is important. The 3 prosecutions and convictions are critical. But we will not solve gun violence with these 3 prosecutions. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for children in this country, and it is a public health crisis. And we will not be able to address it until we start treating it like a public health crisis. And yes, access to guns is a critical piece of that, but it's not the only piece. We have to focus on prevention, and that's going to require us to understand and accept that it's not just one thing. It's the #1 cause of death for children in this country. So I refuse to take a victory lap with these prosecutions. It will not bring back these kids. We have a lot more work to do. I've started the commission to address gun violence, and we are working towards a comprehensive approach, and we have hundreds of dedicated people in all different fields to do this. And I hope that this attention that you're focused on this case, one, I hope it is always about victims. I hope the constant naming of these people and photos of them will shift to focus on the people standing here, the victims, the kids in that school, the hundreds of kids with not one mark on them that will forever be changed. Let's focus on those people. Let's focus on what we can do to prevent this from happening again. That's where we should be focusing. That's where we should be working. That's my focus. That's my office's focus. And it will be far after I leave this office, which I'm not planning on doing anytime soon. And finally, I want to introduce the parents who are standing beside me. This is one small step of accountability, but they want more accountability. And I am proud to stand with them in that endeavor. I'm not going to say their names. I'm going to tell them who you are, tell you who they are. Madison Baldwin's mother, Tate Mears' father, Hannah's father, and Justin's father. They're standing here with me today, and I invite them to make remarks if they want to. But first, if Lieutenant Tim Willis would like to make some remarks. Would you like to make some remarks?
No, thank you.
Okay. He does not want to make remarks.
No, thank you.
Who would like to speak? Steve? Nicole?
So first of all, I just want to thank Prosecutor McDonald and Prosecutor Keese for the marvelous job that they've done, putting in the long hours, them and their team, as well as Lieutenant Willis, Agent Brandon, and the whole law enforcement team that got us to this point. But we're not done. As Ms. McDonald said, these are just the beginning steps. There is so much more that absolutely must be done. It's crazy the way that our society is currently reacting to this. Our children are dying on a daily basis in mass murders. And we do very little about it. We complain about Second Amendment rights, or we say, oh, there's not enough money to put against for mental health issues. You name it, there'll be an argument against it. It's the #1 killer of our kids, folks. We can put people on the moon. We can build skyscrapers, huge monuments like the Hoover Dam, and we can't keep our kids safe in schools. I think people just need to wake up and take action. Stop accepting the excuses. Stop buying the rhetoric. It is not a Democratic or a Republican issue. It's nonpartisan. Do not accept any excuse from any of the politicians. This needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved now. We do not want any other parents to go through what we've gone through. It's as simple as that. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Buckmeyer, Tate's dad. First of all, I want to thank Karen and Mark, Lieutenant Willis, Special Agent Brandon. We met a couple folks that did some work behind the scenes. You guys obviously busted your tails, and we appreciate it. And you know, I kind of want to echo what Steve was saying here. This is a deep issue, and it's not going to be an easy one to solve. And it's more than the gun. Our kids are not doing well these days. We're in a mental health crisis. So the gun is just a tool. So we got to look at other things other than the gun. We got to see what we can do to support these kids better. And that, both parties should be looking at that. This is a nonpartisan issue. We need to solve this because no parent should go through the hell we're going through. And lastly, you know, we've taken care of 3 legs of November 30th. And there's still a 4th leg, and that's the school. And it's time for the school to pony up. It's time to break up that administration country club. And it's time for change. Because we've got 4 kids here dead. And nobody wants to take any accountability. That needs to start tomorrow. Thank you very much.
My name's Nicole. I'm Madison's mom, and I will echo what Steve and Buck has mentioned. I do want to thank the prosecution team, Karen, David, Mark, the advocates, everybody that worked on the case. They have really been that piece that's kind of held us together and really pushed for us and made sure that every step we took, we kept continuing forward. But what I really want to thank is the 3 families that stand with me. This has been a really hard road, and the friendships that I've made with these families are friendships that I wish I didn't have to make the way I did, but these people are some of my best friends, and I thank them more than they will ever know. What I want to say mostly is, yeah, we have a verdict now. We have a guilty verdict for both parents. We have crossed those 3 lines of getting accountability on that end. But right now we have a verdict. We have to execute that verdict. We have to plan for change. We have to reinforce it. This is not just a verdict for attention or media. This is a verdict that actually needs to be put to the platform that it is. How are we gonna use this verdict to actually make that change that needs? We need to start focusing on the school and its failures, the things that they don't want to admit to. That's going to be our next plan for change. They are going to see these families rise up against it, and we will be here fighting every second for our children, because they are not allowed to forget any of them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Craig Schilling, I'm Justin's father. I'd like to start out addressing Karen and the prosecuting team. Thank you so much for your hard work. I can't thank you enough for your efforts in all of this. I'm humbled to be in your presence. Thank you. My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm shaking and so nervous to be here, and I appreciate all of you for your time here. And I really can't say enough about the importance of what we just went through. It's a monumental decision, and the verdict was the same. And I believe that moving forward, it's very important as a society to set the right example for our children and future generations, and come together and use our power of thought and our power of emotion and everything. We can change. We can push forward. We can get through the difficulties of life together if we try. We can't turn our heads to these kind of problems that we face today. It's so important to emphasize the necessity of going after and holding those accountable for their insufficiencies, so to speak. That's where we're at. We have to move forward. We've put much behind us, but there's still so much there in front of us. And I stand with everybody, with these families here, and with Karen and the prosecution, and hopefully with many others, to work on that change that we need, and to go that extra mile and put forth that extra effort to address these problems. I could never imagine being here, and I don't ever want anybody else to have to be here like this. This is a very difficult thing to go through. But I'm happy to have these people here helping me, and all the advocates, all the community members, everybody that has given so much and helped out so much. I thank you all, and I look forward to the future. Hopefully it's a brighter one. Thank you.
We have time for some brief questions.
Karen,
Yes.
is there a message to parents because of these verdicts?
I think it's the message that every single one of us would have before these prosecutions started. You're obligated to use ordinary and reasonable care, and you owe a duty to other kids in that school, in the community, and you're required to exercise ordinary care. It's an egregious set of facts, And, you know, I stood here 2.5 years ago, and I said, this started with one question: where did he get that gun? Where did he get it? And how did he get it? And that is a question that every single one of us as mothers and fathers asked. And that's what has led to the last 2.5 years.
Adrienne Broadus from NBC News. Thank you for your time. Really quickly, now that we have a guilty verdict, how will you use this to create change? And what message do you have to other prosecutors around the country who are looking at what happened here, the history made in Michigan?
I started, and my team started the Commission to Address Gun Violence because I just simply couldn't stomach leaving this endeavor with 3 prosecutions and then calling it a day, knowing that we have done so little as a country to address the #1 cause of death for children in this country. So I implore everybody listening to this, this is preventable. And access to guns is absolutely a critical part of that. But it's not the only part. It's not the only part. Up until recently, the #1 cause of death for children was automobile accidents. And we have lowered that. How? We've educated the public. We require people to provide car seats. We've made cars safer. We've made roads safer. We know kids, you can't get in a car without your kids saying, put your seatbelt on, don't text and drive. What if we taught kids about guns? What if we taught kids about how to navigate emotional adversity? You know, programs like that Buck has started, like 42 Strong, where you're making connections with kids and mentoring them and reaching out way before somebody gets into the moment of crisis. And there are good models which we're going to roll out in our recommendations for threat assessment and crisis intervention. You know, I absolutely applaud these parents for saying what's true. One of these terrible events happens and all we're talking about is the shooter or the people we're prosecuting. But there's so much more. There's so much more. So that's what I'm doing. And I guess the only message I'd have for other prosecutors is be brave, ask tough questions. And if they don't answer, then keep trying. Because I asked the question, where did he get the gun? And that led to a lot more questions. And that led to disturbing, upsetting, and egregious facts. And I could not stand by and tell these parents that what happened and what we know happened and say, there's nothing I can do about it.
Do you believe that? Did the jury give any indication about what drove it home for them? Did they tell you anything, you know, that we can share?
No, and we didn't ask. They've worked hard. It's been a long week. They're tired. So no, they didn't.
Do you believe that the gun storage law that we now have, that we didn't have before, do you believe that that could facilitate bringing this type of case when necessary, given that there's this new legal duty created?
It wasn't in place when I charged the case, but I think any action by our legislature or communities or schools or employers or organizations that recognizes that we have to use common sense when you're handling a deadly weapon. I grew up with guns in my home. Everyone has a right to own a gun, but with that right, of course, you have to secure it. Nobody with looking at this rationally would say that this set of facts is okay. They just wouldn't. The smallest, littlest of things could have prevented these deaths, and as gun owners and those are the peers, they take that responsibility seriously. But all we really require is basic ordinary care, and it wasn't done here.
Prosecutor, along those lines, you ended up using that cable lock during the rebuttal. How much of a lasting impression do you think that made on the jury?
It made a lasting impression on me when I installed that lock for the first time, and my team. We were all sitting around, and it was just very upsetting when I demonstrated that, and it was 10 to 12 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds, and I'm not a police officer, and I'm not an expert in firearms. It's 10 to 12 seconds. And I'm not sure what impact it had on the jury, but it has an impact on me, and I think any parent, and I think for sure these parents standing next to me.
Any idea how many hours your team spent working on the Crumbley cases?
It's been 2.5 years. It was many legal proceedings. I am forever just grateful and impressed with the people. By the way, there's still so many of them. I'm looking at their faces standing here. Investigators, advocates, assistant prosecutors. We're public servants. We don't make any more money because we stay late, but we've spent a lot of time here, and I probably don't focus on that enough, because my first thought is, this isn't hardship. This is hardship. This is hardship for these families. So I'm standing in front of a long line of dedicated assistant prosecutors and people in this office who do not complain. We are. It's a privilege to do this, and we know that it can't take the pain away, but it's one small step towards accountability. I have one more question.
Any chances we'll see charges against any school officials?
We want to hold everyone accountable, but at this time, we just worked for two and a half years, and you were all had sideline view. It wasn't easy, so we're going to work with. I've made a commitment to these parents, and I'm going to keep it. And it really doesn't matter what letters after your name, and nobody cares about that. Most of all, me. I'm going to look at the facts and work with them to get the accountability they deserve. But most importantly, they're not here because they're angry. They're here because they want to prevent someone else being in that position. Thank you so much.
Can you talk a little bit about the differences between the two cases at all? I think we're wrapped up. Thank you. That's it.
Just have everyone go that way. Do you just want to keep going, or do you want to do more? Do you want to just do? Do you want to do?